This is the Witcher 3 Wild Hunts expansion called Blood and Wine. It was released in 2016 by CD Projekt Red. In this video, we will look into the building workflow, from modeling to texturing to modularity. We will look into character concept art and character art. More concept art and cinematic assets.
I'm my own master with a bottle in front of me. It's no disaster, not like a frontal lobotomy.
So we'll start by taking a look at the work of Maciej Kaputa, who worked on the buildings. And we will focus on the Beauclair buildings for now. So we can see here the modular kit being used in different ways. Let's look at a few screenshots from the in-game version. Different lightings. So this is in the main square in Beauclair, in the entrance of the main area. So now we'll take a look at the actual building kit, or part of the building kit. So we can note some things that are very interesting already. First off, the organic shape of the wireframe. As you can see, it's not everything straight, it's not like a grid. And why is that? Well, because they were looking at European medieval references where stuff was built in a very different way than today. So today, all the window frames would be exactly at the same height, like it's the case here. Okay, it is the case here and there. But today's ways of building are much more rigid, and you wouldn't see something like that. And, slight offsets that it's not. So you see, nothing is absolutely, some things are straight, let's be honest, but a lot of stuff are not aligned, and it's on purpose. So the fact that it's modeled this way allows for much more organic feel, right? Like it's offset, it's a little bit chaotic. Architects and builders were good back in the days, but probably the tools wouldn't allow, or it was just the way that things were back in the days. So that's the references they were working with, and that's what they wanted to capture as part of the essence. So that's one important thing. Another very important thing is the bottom part. And we will see this everywhere in this video. All the buildings are built, and it's especially true here in Beauclair. So all the buildings are built so that they can be in a slope, I would say even in an extreme slope. So let's pay attention to this middle part here, which ends up being this one here. So as we can see, the ground level is here. Now let's go and take a look. How does it translate? There's a good 3 meters, 3 to 4 meters that goes down. And it's applied the same principle is applied on every single one of those. And the reason being, here it's still quite a flat surface, but this whole town is in several different slopes, and the general region is on many different slopes. So this is why you need these. So on these screenshots, it's a bit difficult to tell, but from the footage, you can see that everything is in an angle, and it has to work with the terrain, which is usually in slopes. So this is why you end up, I mean, this is a strategy to use to not run into issues. So in some context, you might see the slope going this way. So you're going to be safe. You're going to be okay. There's going to be geometry that fits. You don't need an extra piece to make it work. So this is very, very convenient, right? For any context, any angle, if it's uneven. I mean, that's of course not going to be the case for a central piece like that, but it does apply to every building. We have much more to discover from the same artist. We can appreciate the density also for vertex painting. You see in some areas more is required, in some less. You can see, again, this is probably the best example of this slope strategy. This is definitely more than 3-4 meters. This is 6 to 8 meters here. And you see the same principle here, right? The door opening is here. The ground level would be here. And you have way more geometry going down. So you can see it here. And you can see it was to accommodate this, right? Which had a little step already. But you see this section here is actually this one here, right? So the step goes here. That was the need for this here. But if it is reused somewhere else, and you see there's another slope going this way, so it won't affect this part. So this is really a brilliant strategy that has been around for a long time, but this is an amazing example that we have here. And I also want to point out, actually, let's look at the screenshot. So this is almost a 10-year-old game. This is the expansion of the game, but it's an old game, but it held up extremely well. It's an open world. It's a very large, filled with asset game. But you gotta appreciate the smoothness of these arcades, right? And the shapes here also. It was not low poly. And believe me, in 2015, this was very noticeable, right? It was noticeably high quality. So we could tell that they did something, they had the budget, they put the budget so that it looks good. And then when you see the wireframe of this section, you understand. And here, same thing. Because we could be comparing games from the same year from AAA studios, and it did not look as smooth. They didn't have that budget. They didn't have that many polygons in these parts, right? Like you can see here. Like it looks smooth, it looks good, and that was the intention. We can look from a few different angles. This is really a nice piece, and you see here this is basically 1 to 2 meters, and then there is underneath a very long section that goes much deeper. So I know I'm repeating myself, and I probably will, but I just want to really mention and make sure it's very clear that this technique is commonly used whenever your terrain might require or would create this issue. Then you build your assets this way, and you have no problem.
Implore you.
Let's hear your idea. Give me a moment.
Nice. Ever consider becoming a burglar? Skill like that'd come in awful handy.
I considered it briefly, but ultimately concluded it would be terribly dull. Come.
So there are lots of buildings breakdowns from this artist. I will not cover all of them in the video, but you will be able to access the artist's portfolio and take a look for yourself. It is just absolutely amazing to have access to that. So I wish I could cover every single one of them. I'm really passionate about this topic, but I will jump straight to relevant topics. So I want to draw your attention to the roofs, and especially this one. So you'll hear me say back in the days, 2014 to 2016 were my first professional years as a 3D artist. I was not working, well, unfortunately, I was not working at CD Projekt. I was not working in video games, but I was doing buildings. I was working in architecture, and I was studying how to make buildings efficiently, and I was using Unreal Engine for some clients. So I have been interested in the topic for a very long time. And here you can see, this was the low quality treatment, I would say. It's just a texture, right? The geometry, well, we can basically see some panels, right? It was divided. It looks like it's divided in even panels. There might be 8 of them total. Same as here, right? So that was reserved for roofs that, you know, you couldn't really notice, that the wouldn't pop on the eyes, right? Then you would have those here, which might be a bit more noticeable because of the angle, correct? Like, imagine you're the player. This is the floor level. You're standing around here, right? This is the least noticeable ones. But those, well, you don't need to stand exactly here, but you know, you just take a few steps back and you would see those a bit better, right? So those were modeled, actually. You see the planks? This is actually geometry. And here is the hybrid version, right? So this is what we had, which was kind of in between, because this was a large portion, and we could, I mean, the silhouette was also very important. And this is where they put the budget, right? This is a tileable texture, but on each corner, you will see some of those tiles. Why? Because this is readable from a distance. If it was a straight line with a tileable texture, it would look low quality. It would be low poly, extremely low poly, and it would look extremely low quality. So this is a very smart way to put your budget where it counts. And here, well, this is tileable. All of that here. This is entirely tileable, right? So we don't need to spend any budget here. Only where it counts. So this was, again, this is 10 years ago. We are much, much, much further in terms of performance, capacity of the engines, and especially regarding geometry. We can afford much larger budgets. And we can now have entirely modeled roofs, I would say quite easily. Okay, and here we see again this hybrid version with a little bit more, because the surface was more important, was lower, and more noticeable in-game. Right, so of course from this angle we're super far and even lower than the ground level, so we can't see anything. But actually we see this. right? We see these parts. That's what we would see. Same here. And same here. And even if you pay attention, you can basically see that there's a little issue here, but anyway, right? Doesn't matter. So this is very interesting from this angle. And then here from quite the distance, again, the importance to sell details and high quality. The middle section, we don't see much. And you see those angles, the one that we establish as being the lowest quality, well, see from these angles, we see none of those. We do see this one though, but we don't see this one, and we don't see this one. So this is how you establish priorities and where you put the budget. See here, from most angles, you would see a large, sorry, that was terrible shape. You see a big part of this, right? So this is very, very important to stress out. It's really, and that was like a big expense for the budget, I would say, right? Because this was, I don't know the ins and out of the Red engine, but it was not Unreal Engine 5 technology, right? They did phenomenally well with their first open world game. And from what I read, it was kind of a miracle, but still, they did it, right? They did not cheat. They brought the game, they released it, and it was perfectly stable. And it's of very high quality. So this is really how they could go about this. If you are interested in learning how to apply the techniques that we're covering while analyzing those games, I have created a course in which I show everything step by step. There are no time lapse, nothing is done off screen. I take the time to explain what we do and why we do it. I show best practices. And we are creating a small environment from A to Z. I'm showing every single step of how it's done on a professional production. I can answer any questions you might have on multiple platforms. So if you are interested, there is a link in the description and there's a discount available with the code provided.
Agreed to meet a vampire at a cemetery. How much more cliché can you get?
Nothing comes readily to mind.
Could have left the door unlatched.
What of my privacy? I value it rather deeply. Sadly, this is but a weak infusion rather than a proper distillate.
Even better. I remember your mandrake hooch. Made people say things they'd have rather kept to themselves.
Now, what could Geralt of Rivia prefer to keep to him?
And now we'll take a look at the cemetery. So we have a few pieces to look into. So first off, we have the modular kit for the crypt. So you can see where the polygons are distributed, where the budget is spent, always where it counts. And also on the upper part here and there to show age and chipped rocks, you can see textile density being prepared. We can see the density of the polygons here being set for vertex painting in some areas, and in some others there is less of a need. And we can see those pieces, which are the sealing. So you can see them here with the materials from the engine. And we can see in context, as we saw in the short clip. So this is obviously just a few pieces reused over and over, and then with the level art with the set dressing and some different pieces that we will see. This is from the exterior, the entrance to crypts. So we have a few here. We have a bit more right here where you can see this side being way more dense, way more geometry, and you see something like this here being completely baked on a flat surface. And the process is repeated here and there. Some stuff is baked. You see all those ornaments, all those designs, all of that is baked on a flat surface. And it's chosen wisely, right? See, here is the same thing. Here, completely baked on a flat surface. Whereas here you have, I would say, all this geometry, right? Compared to really no geometry at all. So there are really strategic points where they did spend way more budget, right? And it's all about readability. It's about the silhouette. Even if you're facing it from the front, it seems like it's flat, but the light will bounce differently on this one here, right? On here, if the light bounces, as we saw in the last part of the clip, it works fine. It looks like an aged stone carving with weathering, erosion, so it kind of works. But for a structure like that, it's really, we needed geometry. So same principle goes here. You see all those ornaments, they are all baked on flat surfaces. Just the skull here needed some geometry so that it actually shows some, like it pops out of the structure, right? You can appreciate the shape, right? You cannot see any straight lines in this area. Everything is, see how wobbly it is, just like how stones would look like after centuries, right? Everything is crooked. Everything is it looks organic, it looks natural, it's believable. So this is very important. You see there's not a whole lot of geometry, but the shape that they gave to those steps, this is extremely important. Same here, same, you see here, same thing. Very wobbly, even exaggerated, and that sells it. That sells the age of the model. You see that here, it's actually where you can see pretty straight lines. This does not matter that much. The material will do the job, right? And you see actually that this is chamfered, so it's using weighted normals, so it's not super hard edge on these sides. So it's smoother like eroded stone would be, but the structure itself on the top part is quite straight. Straight lines pretty much everywhere. But on the bottom, on the foundation of this structure where the weight is distributed and, you know, really a lot of weathering, erosion, and all these things. So this is where it's all wobbly. Everything is slightly bent and curved, and this is going to make a huge difference. I see many students work looking at such inspiration and getting their own references, and it ends up looking way too clean, way too straight. Like I would say this one is quite straight, right, compared to the others. And you can see it here in the result. It looks straighter, definitely, but the material, the wear and tear in the material is quite working, right? It's quite wobbly. And then in those more important pieces, then you have this more natural flow to the structures. And we can see it here. And then, of course, there are elements of set dressing that helps to make it look more part of the environment, to integrate it more. We can take a look right now to this one, and in the cutscene, in the short cutscene, we could see this one. And you see this is quite a complex sculpting, right? Probably the artist went in ZBrush and did a crazy job, but then it's baked on just a few polygons. And it's intended this way. Same for all of those carvings here. Because this is quite realistic. Let's take a look at it with the material. This will feel more realistic because this is exposed outside with the rain, with the snow, with, you know, the weathering, and over time the erosion creates this basically, right? That it feels more flat. It flattens basically everything and every every detail. So it's still visible, but it works very well in this case that it's completely baked. So there's no geometry details. But on the top, for the shape itself, you see there's actually quite a bit of poly in this section, right? So those are quite low poly. This one too, and those are very low poly, very, very simple structures. But still, they all have chamfers. Pretty much all sides have chamfer. Not this one, but all the bases here, there are chamfers everywhere to smooth the edges. Here the same, you see some chamfers on every side, here, there, absolutely everywhere. This is also chamfered, but this is really smoothed out. It was meant this way. But let's look at the hardest edges. There is some of it, and then there is some smoother edges here, right? And then the headpiece is way more rounded and smooth, and the budget for polygon is higher. So there was no need for this bottom section to be this fancy, right? Because this is really what you read, what the eye picks up. This is just melting with the block, right? It becomes a unique piece, a one piece. And if the top part in every case here, all the top parts are pretty smooth. With all their variations, they're pretty smooth. So this is really what catches the eye. And then you have this, which is, since it's outside, it's exposed. So, you know, we can expect that it's going to be eroded. So we have more here. You see, of course, it's a few pieces, and they are, like this one is here, then this is here. Like, this is very typical, right? There's like 4 or 5 pieces, and it's been reused over and over. Then we have this cute little direction that you see everywhere in Toussaint, and you see one right here. So this is work from the artist. And then the last piece is this one, which I always liked their wood texture. And you see this is quite low poly. Why? Because the number, and this is actually very low poly, right? It's like you can always tell from not so close, like you can tell even from a distance. The geometry is very low poly, but they used very good materials. They used mostly 4K maps for their tileable material, for the wood material in general. So it did look very good, even back in the days, even 10 years ago. And remember, this is an open world. So yes, you're going to see some of those assets, which are super low poly, like hard cut, hard edges, right? The material is good, but it's a bit like in Assassin's Creed. It's huge open worlds, so some assets get different assets get different treatment, right? But you will see some of those, and then next to it you will see some of those where like the material used is really, really good. And then those huge lugs, I don't know if I can call them lugs, but you know, pieces of lumber, they look pretty good. And then those are different pieces, I believe, that are used here, but same kind of material. And yeah, this is all over the map. Before we go further with this video, I just wanted to discuss a previous video I recorded on this channel. You will be able to find it on the link provided right here. And I show how to get started with the Red Kit engine, which is just amazing. You have access to everything from the game. So basically, what I personally did was export a few buildings, a few assets from the engine onto either 3ds Max or Blender, and then you can actually study. You can import the materials, you can open the materials in Photoshop, and then you can see exactly how they map the materials, what kind of materials they do, how they model the assets, what dimensions, and so on and so forth. The kit is also meant for modding, so if you're a fan of the game, you can always try your hand at creating quests. So my video is meant as an introduction to the Red Kit. I link a lot of resources on how to do stuff because it's a brand new engine, but it's really, really fun. It is time consuming, but if you enjoy, you can spend a whole lot of time learning, playing around, and then trying out your creations. Now we're going to take a look at the work of Jacek Maj, who worked on a multi-texturing shader. So note that the buildings were done by other artists from the environment team, and he specifically worked on a complex shader that works, that's versatile and that can be reused. So you see the different types with vertex color storing different information. You have different masks, and there's dirt that can be applied with vertex painting. So let's take a look at some of the buildings that are using. It's mainly a blending material shader, right? So you can see, of course, it's been used all over the map. It was used, initially it was created for Kaer Morhen, but then it was reused for Beauclair also for this expansion. And as you can see, it's extremely versatile. And the fact that it's so colorful, you know, with a layer of paint, well, it's literally reusing the same materials with a different coat of paint, and it doesn't look like so repetitive, right? Also with the masks doing a great job. And this is just very, very nice shots that we can see from here. And, you know, upon closer inspection, you can see that, oh yeah, those are the same blocks, right? But different colors, different blending, and different masks goes a long way. So you see, these techniques have been around for so many videos that we've been looking at. 10-year-old game, very recent games. It's the same set of techniques that are used, you know, in different contexts with different varying results. But at the end of the day, it's high quality work, right? And it's very high level of reusability. That's really the key to environment art. So if you're interested in going in this direction for your career, or even just as a hobby, but you want to learn really how it's done, this is really the way. You know, as technology evolves, we can increase budgets, we can maybe mix more materials, go with higher resolution, but the techniques remain the same. And this is the kit that was established for Kermoren. And we have some shots from Kermoren, because it really needs to be blended. You see how many layers are blended together so that it doesn't look boring. Because if we isolate just this part here, well, it kind of gets repetitive, right? You can see this part here. Is it exactly the same? No, it's actually not. But you know, like this one here is maybe exactly this one and exactly this one. So you see the repetition in the tileable material. So the way to make this work, well, there are various techniques, but basically blending, masks, there are probably decals have been added here. This definitely looks like decals. It's a mix of a bit of everything that makes it work. And if you study medieval castles in Europe, you see that there are different types of stone. Of course, it's not tileable. Even if it's the same stones that were used, the pattern looks different, right? Of course, it's kind of difficult to reproduce exactly that in a video game texturing context, but those techniques are going to work. And here, this is where you see, maybe at a distance, you see that this looks completely, it's not, right? But it looks like it's really tiled with the same material, but you see some variation here. Then you can see here you have a predominantly smaller stones here. Maybe it's just the lighting, the angle. It looks different here. But as further as we get, and yes, there are color variation here, of course, it's blended differently. But the closer we get, then the more detail we get, right? You can see it's pretty consistently varied pretty much everywhere. But in the further distance, then it looks like, oh my God, this is repetitive. So maybe I'm not sure. Maybe when we get the camera closer, maybe it changes. Maybe the shader adapts. But from this distance, it doesn't look like it's the same thing, right? We have seen this one. Then we can see, and see, this is my suspicion. Then we are here. We are basically there, right? Either this one or another balcony on this side. And this is what's going on. See, this is still, it's pretty similar tiling, but with foliage, with some decals, with some variation. It helps to break the repetition. So we can see a shader for interior walls also that we cannot really see from these screenshots. But yeah, they had, of course, a complex shader to help them with such a large volume of surfaces. Next, we'll take a quick look at Andrzej Dybowski's work as a concept artist. And this is just fantastic. As someone who worked in architecture, and you can see those elevations very clearly. This is just fantastic, and it's so helpful. It's so helpful for everybody, right? To have such details, so many details packed into a few images. So this is just great work, and we can recognize this building that was modeled pretty much one for one, following this reference. It's great, really great. And you can see from the concept, let me just get back to this one, the fact that the windows are not aligned. Like on this axis, it's more standard that it would be aligned, but that vertically they're not aligned. See, this is like a feature, an architectural feature from this period that they were trying to depict, right? So you can see it in many cases. You can see it's not like symmetrical. You can see the shape here. This is a little bit offset to the right, and so on and so forth. See, even this is something very interesting architecturally. And here, super small window here, which is not aligned with the door. So this is really what they were going for. This was in the plans, in the concept art. See, I'm kind of obsessing over that, but I just want to point it out that most likely if you work with modern buildings, more modern buildings, you will not see these things. Usually everything is aligned. That's kind of a core principle. So very interesting when it's not. It really gives a lot of personality to the structure. So quick excerpt from his work that is wonderful. Now on to more concept art, but with a different topic. The ship of the Wild Hunt. So this is basically the beauty shot, which is a very intimidating, scary looking structure, kind of organic looking, which I'm not going to spoil anything, by the way. I know it's a 10-year-old game, but still, if you haven't played it, do yourself a favor, go and play that game. It's important. It's not just my personal taste. It's one of the best games ever. And the Wild Hunt is a big mystery until very late. And so many things are contributing to this mysterious aura, and their ship is one of them, right? Because you're wondering, and this is my favorite. It's absolutely phenomenal, like the look, and you see the iterations, right? So if you're not familiar with concept art and you only see the final version, which, by the way, I'm not 100% sure this is the absolute final version, but anyway, it's a more polished version, right? So if that's what you know of concept art, that's not production concept art, right? That's, I wouldn't say marketing concept art, but this is closer to a marketing kind of promotional material concept art. This is production concept art. This is iterations, right? And even then we're lucky because it's like polished enough. It's really, really good looking. But see, they call it ideation, which is just getting ideas on paper, submitting to art directors and the rest of the team. And it's many rounds of back and forth of add this, remove that. We like that thing here, but not so much this one. And you know, I hear a lot of people praising AI concept art. AI concept art doesn't do that. Okay, you can modify your prompts, I know, and I've been dabbling with prompting concept art, and it gives you pretty pictures very quickly, right? But that is not production concept art. That has no use. You basically can't do anything with those beautiful looking art, big piece of concept art. And, you know, I believe AI can help. There is hopefully in the future, studios, companies, and devs and managers especially figure out really a way to speed up the process of humans, because you will always need humans. I'm not just saying because I'm an artist. I'm not a concept artist, but regardless, for character art, for concept art, for environment art, for material, for whatever, AI will not replace humans. I know what a lot of people think and what a lot of people are reading, like in the present, you see companies firing people using AI. Let's just stick to the video game industry, okay? Because yes, it's happening everywhere. But in the video game industry, it is happening, and everybody is realizing that it's not working. And I know the advocates for AI are saying, yeah, but you know, Will Smith 2 years ago was atrocious. Now he looks realistic. Give it 2 more years. No, we can give it 20 years. It's not going to replace humans. They will eventually hire human backs. The companies who did huge mistake and fired people thinking a few prompters will basically save hundreds of thousands, they are actually losing money. And there was a serious report from a very serious source. I'm sorry, I don't have it here on hand, but basically 97% of companies in the last few years who laid off humans to make room for AI are either regretting it or showing a loss of money. And it's not just the, we're investing, so it's costing more. They are seeing that it's costing more. You know why? Because as great as what AI can do, it will always need a human being, a professional concept artist who actually knows what's what, comes in, says, yeah, this is unusable, this is unusable, this is unusable. Okay, this little part actually speeds up my process. So let's use that. And then he can paint over and do the actual work. So the work is understanding directives, instructions, and you won't get that with prompting. I know that the hardcore advocates are all thinking, yeah, I can do this with prompting. You can't. You can get some different results. You can get variations. And yes, AI will evolve. I'm well aware. But there will never be a time where an art director, and just reach out, if you don't believe me, reach out to any art director and ask them about implementation of AI in their studio. They are all not very happy about it. Some very, very small like tools that were created by some studios are helpful, can maybe become more helpful, but if you are considering replacing concept artists, you're fooling yourself. You will never get iterations. Never ever. You will get variations, which is AI copies something else. But the problem is a concept artist is asked to create by combining existing stuff. But that's the secret of creation. Like Dark Souls is not something that did not exist before. It's just elements of many things packed together, which now is Souls-like. Dark Souls and Elden Ring, and from software games in general, but this specific formula, it became a genre. But they did not invent much. Like they just packed together some stuff brilliantly. And I don't want to take anything away from the genius of what they did, but humans did it. AI can never do anything like that. Okay, so just let it be clear. Concept art is suffering probably right now, but it's just a phase, and it will get back to probably its glory days. So this is other examples of what it can do, what concept artists will do for a studio. They take inspiration, and an artist can incorporate it into something else. Okay, this is creation. This is taking something else, mixing it with an existing concept, in this case, and then coming up with something brand new. And yes, you can type at the end. I know you can prompt a metallic looking, and you will get something similar. But the AI, the prompters, cannot get it to create stuff. Okay, it's just not happening. It doesn't work this way. I know the end result for some people, like, yeah, but that's the same, right? Well, if you had experience working in the studio with concept artists, you would see that it has nothing to do. And then you ask the character artist, the hard surface artist, environment artist, who are working with AI concept, it's unusable because it makes no sense. Because the concept artist, which is a human being, even if this doesn't exist per se, he will make it fit so that this could actually mechanically work, because he has researched some details of construction of the structure, or an armor that would be worn by a character. AI doesn't understand how these things work. And yeah, it will probably improve a bit, but it will still get stuff wrong. So you remember the 6 fingers hands, which, well, now it's fixed mostly everywhere, but now it's onto bigger problems, like armor straps going over and under at the same time. So it does not work. It does not help a character artist figure out how to model this thing. So it's in the details. It's in the how it's actually used. Going on Midjourney and just prompting nice looking stuff is fun for a hobbyist. But if you work, and if you intend to work with a team of professionals, of artists, designers, programmers, that's going to be mostly useless. So it can give the mood, which is good, which is not nothing, but it will not help your team. Your 3D team will struggle to make that work, and that's going to take more time. So if you think that you're smart and you're winning and you're saving money on the concept art part, well, you're going to pay that part like on the other elements of the chain. So it's not working. It's not working, and it's not going to work. But anyway, we can always debate for some who are not agreeing with these stances. But so the artist also did a simple a simple 3D model, which is always great. And I really like to see concept artists do that. You don't need to become a professional, amazing 3D artist. It's just functional 3D for dimensions, for scale, and for the artist to realize how this would translate into 3D. Because the challenge, and every 2D artist, I believe, has to have some very, even limited knowledge, but some knowledge of 3D, because their goal, their role into production is to pass that on to 3D artists. So a 2D concept has to translate into a 3D reality, right? And in some cases, inexperienced concept artists do amazing looking job, but then the 3D artists are like, yeah, that doesn't work. Like, we can't do anything with that. Or, this part does not work. It's true for environments, for hard surface, for characters. And yes, of course, you guessed it, AI cannot do that neither. So this is an amazing piece. This is one of the most interesting concept art pieces that I've found. Not just because I'm a huge fan of the game and like this really impressed me. It's the process behind it and how the team could make it work.
Need to hang on a little longer. Blood'll dry in a few hours. Scent won't bother me anymore. Get you out of here.
The concoction.
We're going to look at character concept art. This one will be from Marta Detlef, which is probably a joke around the name of a main character. But we will be looking at Emil Regis, Geralt's friend. Here is the main concept for Regis, which is a high vampire, which also spends a lot of time in human form, right? And we can see the steps of his transformation. We can see some of the stuff he's carrying on him. And we can see some very interesting iterations. So this does not look at all like the final high vampire, noble, probably quite wealthy character that we got to know in the game, right? And this is the importance of iterations. You see that it starts with an idea, and then it gets refined, then it gets tuned and tweaked, and then it gets changed, and then further changed, and then at the end, you are extremely far from what you had right here. So this is really the beauty of concept art. And now we're going to see the character modeling part. So this is from Marcin Blaszczak, and he provided us with these angles from a turntable, so you can see the cloth, like all the details are, it's so rich with details. It's such an amazing job. And here we see the high poly of the human form, I might say. We can see other angles right here. And here we see the sculpt of the transformed vampire. And here we see in menacing poses with the long nails and in all its glory. Very, very cool character and very well done.
Feign it all. That which bound us was a ruse.
Dead love. It's not that simple.
Oh no, it's very simple. You either deceived me or not. In forgiving you, I grieve. For now, we must part.
Ribbon.
Ha! Seems I've been fooled again. She will pay for this, sooner or later. She will pay! You never should have meddled with her!
If you acknowledge any gods, start praying now.
Let's go back to the concept artist Marta Detlef and the work on Detlef. So this character is very interesting, very, very different transformations, of course, but even more than Regis. So we can see the iterations on different versions of this noble look. And we are seeing, this is actually his last phase, his last transformation in his highest form of vampire. So let's go back to the work of Marcin Blaszczak, who did Regis and Detlef. So this is an amazing model. You can see that the hair were done by another artist because there is a lot of work involved in doing realistic hair like that. And we can see the nice look. We can appreciate all the details of the high poly of the sculpt. Very cool looking antagonist character. And then we have the vampire form, of course. Still have the human form here and the first phase of the fight. We have the sculpt of the head also here. We have more character concept art, but I'll let you go over the board. I will make the board available very soon. And we also have more character art with detailed breakdown, with wireframes, amazing beauty shots. So there is a lot more on the board, but I don't want the video to run for too long. And I want to jump to a cutscene asset, which is the actual crow that is featured in the main opening cinematic. And one thing to note, the cinematic, the super high-end cinematic, was handled by an external studio. Of course, assets are handled in-house, and that was the case for the bird here, the crow, and we can see quite a bit of detailed. Of course, this is a super highly detailed model. You can see the feathers are amazingly detailed. You can see that everything looks good, and we have a bit more information on the different parts. And you see that the budget is, of course, very different than the in-game assets. That's obvious for the needs of the asset itself. So this is not the typical crow that you see on the roof of a house. This is the one that is featured in the cinematic. So very highly detailed, super high poly.
Junction. The trolls, the corpse eaters, the werewolves. Did we raise our swords against them? Or have we laid this burden on others? On so-called witches. Stray children taught the ways of foul sorcery, their bodies mutated through blasphemous ritual. Sent to fight monsters, though they could not distinguish good from evil. The flicker of humanity, long extinguished within them. Yes, their numbers have dwindled through the years, but a few still roam our lands, offering their bloody work for coin. To this day, they shame us with their very existence. The North bleeds, flogged by war. The battles are the gods' whip, chastisement for our sins. And let us not forget the terrors, the scourges from beyond our world. The wild hunt rides the sky with every full moon. The Dark Raiders abduct our children into lands unknown. Some say they herald a second conjunction. Can we chart a course back into the light? Will we find the strength to banish the mages from our kingdoms? Unite around the warmth of the eternal fire. Nigh is the time of the sword and axe. None will fight this war in our stead. Nigh is the time of madness and disdain.
And lastly, I wanted to share the work of Gregor's Pribis on the cutscenes, on the 2D cutscenes. Those are absolutely fantastic. They are, you can find them all throughout the game. And I thought this added so much to the experience. We have some in-engine cutscenes all throughout the game already. And instead of expecting the studio to produce super high-end cinematics, those were absolutely wonderful. And they serve many purposes, basically initially to recap the story of The Witcher, then to present the current event. And when you logged in, you had a short reminder with one of these scenes, and it was just fantastic. I loved it so much. So that's it for our exploration of The Witcher Wild Hunt. This was a little bit more about the last expansion, Blood and Wine, simply because this is what was available from all my research. So this is a fantastic game. This is a must-play game. Even if you're not an RPG specialist, this is one of the best games ever in the history of video games. CD Projekt Red has been definitely put on the map. They were already, of course, working on Witcher 1 and 2, but now they are a juggernaut in the industry. And while we patiently wait for The Witcher 4, I invite you to check out the Red Kit engine, which is a lot of fun. And there are so many mods to play the game with relighting, with better texture packs. I did the experience a few years ago, and it felt like a fresh new game. It's not all about the graphics, but also I ended up having different weapons, and it felt like a different experience. But anyway, the good old game, as I purchased on day one 10 years ago, with the amazing, it's one of the best set of expansions ever. Any game included. This is a must play. This is really on the narrative level. Nothing comes close to it. Quest design, side quest design, character arc, NPC. If you're interested in writing, if you're interested in how do I make interesting characters, interesting quests, this is the #1 place to look for. So this is it for now. Please like the video, leave comments about your experience with the game, with the expansions, hype the video, subscribe if it's not done. Shout out to the members of the channel, and you are all welcome to join. Additional perks will be added very soon, along with many exciting things for the channel. And I'll see you soon for another breakdown.